All right, everyone, 6:08 p.m. Central Time, Thursday, October 26th. It is session 9, so it's the last night of class. We're going to do, there are no slides for tonight. We're just going to do some challenges. One of the challenges is going to take up a pretty good chunk of time, as it is a fairly in-depth challenge, but we're going to, the first one that we do will be a good warm-up for the big challenge that we do. And so we're going to start with number of characters tonight, and then the big challenge is employee data. And if we have some time, we'll do maybe a couple of the recursion challenges in here as well. All right, so let me go ahead and pull up number of characters, and we're going to go ahead and fork that. And I do apologize. At some point tonight, I'm going to get a grocery delivery. So hopefully when that happens, we'll just take a quick break here while I grab everything from outside. All right, so got the challenge forked, and all right, so with this, we're going to write a function that takes in a string of lowercase characters and returns an object containing the count of each letter in the string. All right, so we're getting one parameter, which is going to be a string of characters. And we're going to return one thing, which is an object that has key value pairs of the character as a key and the number of occurrences, no clue if I spelled that right, as a value. All right, so we'll say C below as example. All right, so I'm going to need to iterate through my string and examine each individual character. As I come across a character for the first time, I'm going to need to all right, so I'm going to need to iterate through my string and examine each individual character. As I come across a character for the first time, I'm going to need to create a key inside my object and establish my account, or not my account, establish my count. So how many times has it occurred? And if it's the first time I've seen it, it's the first time that it's occurred. And then each time after the first time, I will need to increment my count by 1. I will need some conditional logic to control these two different actions. And once I've iterated through my string, I will return the object. All right, any questions about any of the prep work that we did here? Okay. So let me go ahead and pause the recording. All right, everyone, welcome back from the number of characters challenge. So we got a solution with the class, so we're going to go ahead and go over it now and get it recorded. All right, so first things first, we're always going to console.log our params to see what we've got coming in here. All right, so there's my string. Now, there's a couple of different ways that we can handle this. So we can iterate on a string. A string has index positions just like an array does. It also has a length just like an array does. So I can do say string 0 and I'll get the first character, right? Just the B out of there. And I can also do string.length and it'll tell me the length of the string, right? So I can loop on this just like I would an array. So you can split this into an array, but it's not necessary at this point. And so let's go ahead. We'll just start writing our string. So we'll say for let I equal 0, I less than string.length, and I plus plus. And then we'll console.log str box I, right? And hopefully what this will show me is every character in the string one at a time. All right, so that looks pretty good to me. That's my string one character at a time. So now I need to take two different actions, but I want to solve for the first one. And so as I come across a character for the first time, I'm going to need to create a key in my object and establish my count. All right, so I need to create an object up here. So we'll say we'll just call it letters, and we'll give it an empty object. I need to basically create a key value pair with the key being the letter that I run into, and then the value being 1, because this is the first time I've come across it. So I'm going to take this string bracket I out of my console.log, and I'm going to create my key, and then I'm going to assign it a value of 1. So let's go ahead and take a look at the object in its entirety. And hopefully what I should see is a key for each of these characters, and they should all just have the number 1. Cool. BDAC, BDAC. All right, and they've all got the number 1. So now I've handled creating my key and creating my initial value for it. But how do I handle duplicates, right? So because I hit some of these letters multiple times, I just kept assigning the value of 1 over and over again. All right, so now if it is already in there, I need to take a different action. And so I know that I need some conditional logic here. So I'm going to do this if the key doesn't exist, but if the key does exist, I need to increment the count by 1. And so what we can do here, and there's a couple of different ways to do it, is we can say if, and we can say stri in letters. We could also use a built-in method right here. So we could do letters dot has own property, and then stri, stri would be another way of doing the same thing. Right, so this uses a built-in, this uses some JavaScript shorthand, and either way will work. And so if this is true, so if it's already in there, right? So excuse me, getting ahead of myself. If we find that this key, so stri is going to be one of these letters as a key, if we find that it already exists, this will be true. And so we're going to enter into our if statement. And if it's already there, we don't want to assign it the value of 1. It already exists with the value of 1. That means that we want to increment it by 1. So we can do letters, str, bracket I, and then plus plus, right? Or plus equals 1. But plus plus works fine. And now, if that is not true, we need our else case. Right, and this just belongs right here inside our else case. And so let's go ahead and console.log letters. All right, so there's B1, B2, A3, C1. We can, it'll handle special characters as well, but right. And so we can do something like this. And if we run it, right, there's all of the occurrences. So next, and kind of the challenge that I throw out to the class is how do we put this in alphabetical order? And we absolutely can get these in alphabetical order, but we have to do it before we create the object. So we need to modify this string before we start to iterate on it. Now, if you broke it into an array already and you solved this with an array, you can just do the dot sort built-in method. But because we didn't do that, what we'll need to do is basically split this apart, sort it, and then join it back together. So we're going to use 3 built-ins here, and we're going to just assign it in place. So we're just going to say str is equal to str dot split, and we're going to split it on every character. And then we'll say dot sort, and the default sort on this should be just fine. Let me stop. I want to, let me throw it up here, okay, and there. And then finally, we're going to join it back together. Right, and so we're going to join on every character. I'll throw that there. So what we did is we took the string, split it into an array. Every character is its own element. We sorted it, and then we joined it back together in a string. So if I were to take a console.log and look at string here now, before we start iterating on it or doing anything else, let's comment this stuff out. There's my string, and everything's been put into alphabetical order. Now, objects do not have a guaranteed order, but usually when they're being displayed, they'll be displayed in the order that the key was created inside it. So we will go ahead and uncomment this. Get rid of this console.log, and we'll run our function again. Right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, U, Y, or U, W, and Y. All right, so that's in alphabetical order. And we can take this out of the console.log and just return it. And whoops, because I've never brought this in a console.log. There we go. And that's the solution. So any questions on how I tackled this one?
What types does that all work on that has own properties?
Has own property is specifically for objects.
Okay, thanks.
Right, and so we can take that here real quick. We'll throw it in here. And we get the same answer. So it'll work either way. All right, so that is it for the number of characters challenge. Let's see here. So next is the employee data, which is, again, it's kind of like the capstone challenge for the course. It's basically objects, arrays, and loops. And we'll tackle this one in multiple parts, just like we did, because this one is a larger problem. And I'm going to ask for more help with the prep work on this one, because we're going to try and do lots of pseudocoding before I turn the class loose on this one. All right, so let me grab this. And has anyone looked at this one yet at all?
No,
And that's a surprise.
Just enough to be overwhelmed by it.
Yeah, like I said, this one beat me up pretty bad the first time I tried to do it. Luckily, it was not recorded for all time to be saved on. Whoops, this is the one. Here. All right. You are a new programmer at your company. Your CFO needs some data regarding all of the employees. Your CFO needs to know the number of employees per job title, the average salary for the job title within the company, the average bonus that a job title receives within the company, and the average total compensation for that job title. You're given an array of objects that represents all the employees in the company. You need to parse through all the employee data and return an array of objects that represents each job title and the corresponding compensation data, including title, total employees, average salary, average bonus, and average total comp. All right, so we have one parameter coming in, which is an array of objects. And we have one parameter going out, which is an array, I'm sorry, not parameter going out. We're returning one thing, which is also an array of objects. All right. So with that, the array of objects coming in, the object will contain name, title, salary, and bonus. All right, and on the way out, we need to return an object what we got here, title, total employees in that position, average salary for that position, average bonus for that position, and average total comp for that position. All right, and so our object coming in is going to look a little different than our object going out. All right, so we're going to have to figure out how to translate these into these. And so we've got one example. All right, so let's take a quick look here. Right, so do we need to be concerned with name? Right, does our outgoing object care about name?
No,
Right, do we need to know, is the title going to be important?
yes. I'm gonna quick answer these easy ones while I can.
Yeah, well, and so we know we need the title, we need salary. And we need bonus, right? So All right, so when we look at this, so this is, again, like this is the data that we're gonna get, and then the data going out. What is the one thing that is unique to each of these objects in our array of objects?
Different title and the outgoing one.
Yeah, and the outgoing one, the title is kind of the thing that glues it together, right? Because the number of employees, average salary, average bonus, like we're not grouping people by salary ranges or bonus ranges or how many people are in the department. We're grouping employees by what their title is. Right, and so let's grab this.
I really appreciate how you model writing all this out before jumping in.
Yeah, no problem. And again, because I want you to have this for notes later when you come back to it and everything. I said, okay, I got private, you're right. All right, so, and also, so do we care what any one person's individual salary is?
No, we just was average. Yep, average.
Right, so but how do we calculate the average of these?
We'll have to figure out how to loop through it, add them, and then divide by the number of entries.
Right, so as we group people into their unique groups, right? We need to what? Right, before we find the average, what are the two numbers that we need?
For average salary,
Yep.
we need the salary for everybody, right? And then what is that for? Is that for bonus or just the salary?
Just for
and the
salary.
total? Okay.
So
Yeah,
we need the salary for everyone, but what do we need from the salaries of everyone? We need to know the total, right? So we need to know that it's 125K plus 135K plus 122K. So whatever that adds up to, almost 400K, right? So we need to know the total of all the salaries in that group. And then we need to divide it by the number of individuals in that group to get the average. All right, and then average total comp's easy. We just need to gather or add together average salary and average bonus. So there's nothing there. And then right? And so we know that we need to keep track of the number of employees that have it. We're going to have to calculate that manually. All right. So, and this draws on directly some of the one previous to that. And so this is really the first part of the challenge here, right? Is how do we serialize the data that we're given into a format that we can use it to build the report that we need. All right. Now, does anyone have any thoughts on how we can store this?
You mean like what format?
Yeah,
An
what data
object.
structure could we use?
An object.
Okay, so we could use an object to store everything. Right, and so what would our key be?
Title.
Right, so we could do a object and then we could say title is the key. So what does our value look like? Right, so for
Right.
each, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just gonna say a string, but go ahead.
Okay, so for each title, right? So for developer, we need to keep track of the total number of employees, the average salary, the average bonus, and the average total comp. So how do we store multiple values with one key?
An object inside or an array inside?
Yeah, exactly, right? So we know that an object and an array can have multiple things. We could do this as an object. I would probably recommend doing it as an array just because an array is a little bit simpler. It's a little less writing. Right?
And it's all, yeah, it's all the same kind of material, information too, right? It's not, we don't need a key and a value.
Right, and we just need the values. And then as long as we're accessing them in the same order each time. Right, and so we've got salary, bonus, and again, we can track the total comp directly in here, or we can calculate that at a later time once we have all the salaries and bonuses. If we don't actually need to store it, so then we just need employee count. Right, and so now we have a object by title, right? So it looks like this, or if we were to do it, it would look like something like that, right? And so now we've got we've taken our action here, right? So like we've built an object that has a key of the title and then tracks all of the information that we need to keep track of. Now, this is the first time we run into someone like this, right? Like we basically are going to do just like we did in the last challenge. We're going to set our employee count to 1, and instead of just setting the count like we did with the character, we're going to basically we're going to set the initial salary value and we're going to set the initial bonus value, right? So we also need conditional logic that handles 2 situations. The first time we run into a new title, what to do each subsequent time we run into a title, right? And this would be the first time, right? And then the subsequent times, just like we did, and let me scroll that down a little bit, right? So we did something that looks like this, right? So we've already got the title. And so instead of establishing salary, it would be salary plus equals next salary, right? And then plus equals next bonus, and then plus, right? Because we're just going to be implementing it by an additional, right? So we keep the key of developer, and now we'll say it's up to 250, and the total bonus is up to 45,000, and the employee count is up to 2. Right? And so does that make sense that we're basically doing the exact same thing we did over here? We're just, instead of only incrementing the count of the letters, because there's just one thing in this key, we're going to be incrementing 3 things each time, but we're still doing a key and a value. The value is just not an integer this time, it's an array with multiple integers in it, but we can still increment multiple things in that array at the same time.
It looks easy while you're just free typing it, but
Well, so the big thing is that it's going to look very similar to this, right? We're going to need a for loop. We're going to need a conditional statement that is basically checking the exact same conditional logic. We're just going to be looking for a key inside of our object. And then this does one thing, right? And so we're just going to need 3 lines each time that increment 3 different things, right? So we'll have one that does salary, one that does bonus, and then one that does count, right? And then same thing here, we'll have one that sets salary, one that sets bonus, and one that sets count.
okay.
So there's more to it, and like the amount of code we'll have to write is getting a little bit longer, but the mechanics are absolutely identical.
Okay.
And so, and that's why I say is like looking at this as a whole problem is extremely overwhelming, right? Like this is saying turn this into this magically. It's very easy to get lost in this, but we're going to do the same thing, right? Like we're going to console.log our data. We're going to take a look at it. We're going to, we know that we need to do a loop. So we're going to write our loop, and then we're going to handle what happens the first time we run into a key. And then we're going to write our conditional logic inside the loop. And then we're going to handle what happens each subsequent time we run into that key. And so we're going to solve it one step at a time. And it looks big and scary, but it is this, like the spitting image of this one, you're just throwing in working with arrays on top of it. And so as long as we don't start like paddling out into the deep end without hitting the run button a bunch of times, we should be okay as we work our way through this. All right, so now at the end of this, we would have 3 keys, right? So we would have an object with 3 keys. So once our initial loop has completed, we will have an object similar to this. And it would just be developer, right? And there'd be some numbers here, some numbers here, and some numbers here. And then same thing. We would have designer and product manager, right? So then the numbers will be bigger, but this is basically what we'll be dealing with. It should look just like this. So now we are done serializing the data. We've scraped all the data that we need to be able to calculate the title, the total employees that have that title, the average salary of the individuals that have that title, the bonus, and the total comp. All right. And so from there, we need to figure out how we're going to assemble this data, right? And so I'm going to need an array to hold my objects. I'm going to create a temporary object that I can use to calculate each of the needed stats for my position. Let's call my title. I will then push that object into my final results array. Right, and so I'll say I'll need a final results array to hold my objects, right? Because at the end of the day, we're returning an array of objects, right? So a square bracket, curly braces. I will need a second separate loop that will iterate through each of the keys. All right, so each of the key value pairs in my object. Right, so and then return my final array. All right, so good timing. That is it for the pseudocode. It is 7:05. I just got the text message saying that my Amazon shopping order was delivered. So let's take a 10-minute break, and then we're gonna come back and we'll go through this as a class. If Sean or Kim or Monty, if you want to drive, you'll be more than welcome to. Again, I will be here to help every step of the way. But we'll go through this as a class. We won't record it, and then once we've got it, then we'll come back and we'll record the official solution for it. All right, but we'll call it 7:05 right now. I'll see everyone back here at 7:15. So 10-minute break. Thank you.
Sounds good.
All right, everyone, welcome back from the employee data challenge. That one is, again, like I said, it's pretty much the hardest one that we do. It's kind of like the capstone for the intro to coding. So I'm going to go over a solution for it now. And since the class was able to put together a working solution themselves, if I screw up, everyone should be able to save me. All right, so let's go and get started on it. So I'm going to console.log my R of employees. Oops, I don't have a function called console.log get employee data, and then we're going to feed it employee data. Okay, so that is my entire array of objects with name, title, salary, bonus. Again, if we come back up here and look at the notes, I know I don't need the name. I just need the title. I need the salary, and I need the bonus. Okay, and so we're going to create a key value pair inside of an object that's going to hold our data. And the key is going to be the title, so developer or product manager or designer. And then I'm going to create an array that holds 3 integers. So the salary, the bonus, and the employee count. And so there's going to be 2 different, sorry, I'm scrolling around a lot here. There's going to be 2 different outcomes here, right? Which is going to be that there's going to be the first time we run into a new title, and we're going to have to create the key and set the initial values. Every time after the first time, we already have that key in place, we're going to need to increment the 3 values in our array. So let's go ahead and get started on that. All right, so we're going to do, let's go ahead and say, let serialized data equal our empty object. And then we're going to do a for loop. So we'll say for let I equal 0, I less than r of employees dot length, and we'll do I plus, oops, I plus plus. And actually, I apologize, Kim, in the version that we did with you on your screen, did we do a for loop, or did we do a for of loop for the initial loop?
We did a for loop.
Okay, cool. I'll keep it the same then. All right, so now that I'm here, let's go ahead and take a look at R of employees I. Right, so now notice how up here this tells me I have an array and I have different objects in it. I don't get my array, so I'm just getting the individual objects. And so now if I want the title out of my first object, or the title out of each of the objects, right? So this is in my increment, this is my count, I'm counting through each object in the array. I want the title to get the key out of, or to get the value out of an object, I need to give it the key. So let's go ahead and run it again. And notice now I'm just console.logging the values of the titles, right? Which is developer, product manager, and designer. And this is also what I want to use as my key for my my new serialized data object that I'm building. All right, so we could say serialized data, and then the key is that, and then we need to assign it a value. So I'm just going to assign it a value of 1 to start with, and we'll say console.log serialized data. All right, so I've got 3 keys: developer, product manager, designer, all with just the value of 1. Now, what I actually need is an array, right? And I'm going to need an array with 3 values. And so I'm going to need the salary, the bonus, and the count, right? And I'll just give it the count right away. All right, so there's my array, and I know I can put values into it. Now, for my salary, I'm going to basically get into R of employees. And just like I did it with title here, I want to get the salary this time, right? So I'm going to give it my iterator, so that I'm going through 0, 1, 2, 3 as the different objects in my array. But each time, this time, I'm going to be getting the salary. So I give it the key salary, and it'll return the value of that salary. All right, so let's go ahead and do this again. All right, so now instead of just saying salary, there's my actual salary. And same thing here now, I'm going to do this, except instead of just using the string bonus, I'm actually going to say bonus. And then let's clean this up. All right, now I've got my bonuses and my count. So that's everything I need. This over here a little bit. All right, so that's it for building my key value pairs and assigning it its initial value. Now, just like on the last challenge when we did number of characters, right? So we were checking to see if the key existed inside of our object, right? So we're going to do the exact same thing here. So this is my key, right? These are what I'm looking at. So I can say if this key is already in serialized data, take this action, else take this action. And because we know that if it's not in there, this is how we set the initial value. So this will be our else case. So now we need to set our true if case, right? So if this already exists in there, now I need to get in there and start to increment the values of my array, right? So same thing, let's go ahead and do a console.log. And let's take a look when we feed this key in, right? I should get the value, and the value that I'm expecting to see down here is an array. Right, so there are my arrays, right? So this is my key, this is my array. If I want to access a value inside of my array, I need to access it by the index, right? So if I'm doing the bonus, I'm sorry, if I'm doing the salary, which is in my 0 position, so outside, and so again, this whole thing right here is my key. This is my object, and inside the value, right, I want to get the 0 index position. Right, and so now I'm just printing out the salaries. So what I can do is now, instead of setting an initial value, I can increment my existing value by doing the same thing right here, right? So I'm going to take this, I'm going to put this right here. And now I'm also going to grab this again, or actually, I'm sorry, first off, I'm going to pull this out of the console.log. This doesn't need to be in a console.log anymore. And then I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to move to the 1 index position, right? So this is 0 at the 1 index position is my bonus. And so instead of incrementing the salary, I'm incrementing my bonus. And then lastly, I need to increment my count. And so to do that, we're just going to use some shorthand. We're going to grab this, put this down here, and then we're just going to do plus plus. All right, so let's go ahead and run this again and see what our serialized data looks like now. All right, so these numbers look like they've grown from these numbers. My counts have incremented. This is looking good. All right, so I have serialized all of the data that I need, right? I don't need to do anything else with R of employees at this point. Like, I've pulled all of the data that I need out of it, and I've created my new object. So now what I'm going to do is, first off, let me get rid of this empty space that I don't need anymore and clean that up. I don't need this console.log. And so I am going to write another loop, and I am going to need to loop through serialized data, right? So I'm going to need to loop through it and look at each of the key value pairs and extract the data from this. And I'm going to use it to build my final product, which, sorry, the examples are down here, right? So I need to build an object that looks exactly like this, right? So my keys are going to be title, total employees, average salary, average bonus, and average total comp. And there's a little typo in here. We're not going to worry about that. And then I'm going to need to take each of these objects after I'm done constructing each one and push it into an array, right? And so up here, we'll define an array and we'll call it results, and we'll just give it an empty array right now. So now I am going to loop through my serialized data object, right? And to do that, I believe I need a for in. And so we're going to use the keyword key, and we're going to say for key in serialized data. All right, and so let's go ahead and take a look at this. So we're just going to console.log the key. And what I would hope to see is developer, product manager, and designer down. Right, developer, product manager, and designer. So those are my 3 keys inside of my serialized data object. And if I want to see the values, I need to give it the object name and then access the object by each of the keys. And so again, just like I did up here, when I give an object a key, it will return the value to me. All right, so developer, that's my key. This is my value, key, my value, my key, my value. All right, and same thing within the value, if I want to access just one part of it. Right, those are just my salaries. Those are my employee counts and so on. All right, so outside of the console.log, I'm going to create a temporary object. So we'll say let temp obj equal an empty object. And inside of that, so now I am creating key value pairs inside of temporary object. Right, so I'm going to, I won't grab that, I'll make life harder. But basically what I'm going to do is say temp obj, and then I'm going to give it a key, which is title. And right now I'm just going to give it an empty string. Or actually, I'll give it the value 1. All right, and we'll do this and this and this and this. Right, we'll say 2, 3, 4, 5. And we'll call this total employees. And then average salary, average bonus, and then average total comp. All right, and let's go ahead and console.log our temp object. Right, and what I would expect to see is 3 times, because I'm getting different keys here. I'm going to see the same object 3 times, but I should see an object with these 5 keys in it and these corresponding values for each of the keys. Right, there we are. There's my 3 temporary objects: title, total employees, average salary, average bonus, average total comp. So let's go ahead and start using the correct data here, right? So for title, I just need the actual title, right? Which is just the key, right? So when I come back up here, remember my key is the actual titles: developer, product manager, designer. So if I just replace this with key, right, there are my correct titles. And now for this, for total employees, I need to access serialized data. Right, and then by the key. And then, so if I do this, just this, I should have an array here, right? And it's 0, 1, 2. So if I then give it the bracket notation for 2, that's my employee count. Right, there's my employee count. Now the same thing down here, I'll grab this and we'll come down here for average salary is at the 0 position, and for average total bonus it's at the 1 position, and then for average total comp it's basically these 2 items added together, right? So I can take this plus this, right? And I'm almost there, but I don't actually have averages yet, right? Like I have the totals for all of the developers and all of the product managers and so on. So to calculate the average, I need to divide these 2 by the number of employees involved, right? Because if I've got 3 developers, I've added 3 developer salaries together, but that's not a problem because I can take this and I can just basically say this in this. All right, so we'll go ahead and stop this, run it again. And we look good down for these 2, but for this one, I've definitely got some floats. So all I'm going to do for that is I'm going to parse these to an int. So we'll just say parse int, and same thing down here. Parse int. All right, so let's go ahead and check this against the results, right? So I've got a developer, 3 of them, 127, 333, average bonus 13,000, average total comp 140, 333. Next is product manager, got two of them. 101,000, 18,750, 119,750. Yep, that looks good. And then same thing, designer 82,250, 7,750, 90,000. All of that lines up. All right. So right now I have each of these temporary objects that I'm console.logging. And what I'm going to do is, instead of doing a console.log, is I need to move these into my result array, right? So we've got results. So I'm just going to say results dot push our temporary object. So that each time we loop through for the key, so for developer, we're going to build out everything we need into an object, and then we're going to push it into our results array. And we're going to restart our loop, and we're going to come in with a product manager, load in all the stuff we need, push it to the results array. Finally, we'll do the same thing for designer. And then we're going to return results. And I've got my console.log down here. All right, and there are my three objects nested inside of my array. So that one is, like I said, that's by a mile, like the hardest one that we do in class. Any questions on how I solve this?
What you post everything on YouTube, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, if you go into back into the intro to coding channel, you'll see each night I've got the links, and there's always the link to the video. Right.
Okay.
So here's last night's, so on and so forth. Yeah, and it's part of the playlist. So if you go to Code Platoon, and then we have created playlists, intro to coding live, right? So this has all of the sessions in it. So session 9 will go right into this as well. And I will drop this in the chat just so you have it offhand here. So that's the link to the playlist for this course.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. So again, this is pretty much the last challenge that we work on in the course. Go forth and do good things. If you have questions, if there's more stuff that you want to talk about, we've still got about 20 minutes before the end of class. So and we can end it early tonight, or and if there's anything you want to talk about, feel free to hit me with it now.
I'm trying to figure out how to word this. I know it's important that we don't cheat, but it's totally okay to use resources, right? Like if I can't remember how to use that for in to go back and look at my notes, that's not cheating, right? You guys do that even after you're working and getting paid?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there's a and again, there's, I think it's like, as you get into programming, the humor of programming starts to make more sense. But there is a very famous tweet in developer circles where a professional developer is offering to help his wife, who's in her like master's in like business, and she has to take like a coding statistics class, and he offers to help, and she says no, that's cheating, and he's like, well, you should just Google it, and she's like, no, that's cheating, and he's basically like, should I tell her? Because as you become a professional developer, there is no cheating, and all you do is Google and Stack Overflow and Chat GPT and figure out how to write the code that you need to write. So yes, absolutely, using your resources, referring back to things, because I believe even when you're taking the application, like they give you a browser window that you can use that's like a safe browser. It's basically monitored to make sure that you're not just going to like look up the answer, like what is the answer to this problem. But like absolutely, like you're struggling with a for loop or like a for in loop, right? So like MDN for in, right? And coming back here and looking up why, like what's going wrong with this, like you're absolutely allowed to use these resources.
Okay, okay.
Because, and like I said, and even throughout the course of like Code Platoon, like you have to take a couple of assessments, and the assessments are open book, closed people, right? So you can use any resource out there except for like other students or asking other people the answer. But like part of the challenge of these like tests that they give you is that you're able to go out there and use your resources and use documentation and find the answers that you're looking for. Because that's all I do all day long.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
But I have the benefit of asking other people when they have time for me. So, but yeah, and so I know you had both like expressed interest in attending Code Platoon. I hope you do it. And Sean, I know you've got stuff going on where you're still in and you've got to get out and all that stuff. And Kim, I know you're already started on the application, and I can't give like explicit answers on the application. But please, like when you're done with the application, you get accepted to Code Platoon, or if something happens and you go a different route, whatever, if you've got coding questions, I'm not dying anytime soon, I hope. So I will be floating around in the Code Platoon intro to code, and you can always send me direct messages. But please reach out, ask questions. Even if I'm not around, like I said, that self-paced TAs. The intro to coding has been a little quiet lately, but I mean, people are throwing in questions like, I don't believe this person was in class. I think he's taking the self-paced videos right now. Like jumped in, helped him. Someone else asked a question. He didn't at the TAs correctly. It's at self-paced TAs. But I think he direct messaged me and he got an answer that way. Right, like he was asking questions up here. He's not even a self-paced TA. I believe he's like one of the full-time immersive TAs, and just like they all monitor it. Like people will jump in and do what they can to help you.
Okay, I will start using that more maybe. I do have another question on, I know you can't give exact information, but on one of the questions, it gives resources, excuse me, to check into to help you answer it. And it says Ruby hash tables. And I'm thinking, can't use Ruby code on the tests, right? I mean, that's not compatible, or is it compatible with JavaScript?
It's not compatible. So you can, I believe you can take the challenges in different languages, and they may have a note in there, and it probably doesn't change from the thing to thing. But like if it's giving you that, like I believe a Ruby hash table, a hash is the same as a dictionary or an object in JavaScript. Oh, let me see here, Ruby hash table.
Yeah, I watched a video. That's all it looked like to me. So I didn't know how that would help me.
Yeah, and I mean, they may have grabbed the challenge, and the challenge was originally written for Ruby, and they've should probably make that a little clearer. I'll talk to Guillermo about that. But yeah, I mean, a hash is just a object, right?
Okay.
Right, because if I showed you this outside of the fact that there isn't a let there, this looks exactly the same way you do it as JavaScript, in that it's in snake case instead of camel case, right? But
Right, yeah.
right,
The format is still the same. Yeah.
colon, value, comma.
Yeah, okay. Just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing a whole resource that I didn't realize was available. But ignore that, right? I know you said we should check into Ruby and other things at some point, but not for the test, right? That's
No, until you get into Code Platoon, focus on Code Platoon. Like if you want to go to Code Platoon, and you want to complete the application, focus on JavaScript to get through the application. Like I said, free code camp. At this point, you can go through some of this stuff, but I think you guys have a lot of this stuff down. But also, the other thing, because it's broken up into so many pieces, right? Like, you can search this, like if you're having problems with an object, right? Build a Java, like search this objects, build a JavaScript object, assessing properties with dot notation, assessing properties with bracket notation, updating object properties, right? Add new properties to an object, delete properties from an object. Okay. And this will give you a very like, hey, I'm working through this again on my own, and I was able to create the new value, but I'm having a hard time modifying the existing one. I can't remember how to do that. Well, and basically, right, there was one that was like updating, right? Add new properties, updating object properties. But you can click in here and there'll be like an example that you can try and work out and then run it, and it'll tell you if you're doing it right or not.
Okay. I
Right?
have done a bunch of those, but it's nice to know you can search. I didn't realize that. I was just
Well,
kind of doing
it's
the order.
just like the Command F is your browser search. Like it's nothing special, or Control F for you if you're on a PC. But the other thing too is like you've got between basic algorithm scripting and then the intermediate algorithm scripting, right? Like you've got another 37 challenges.
Okay.
And these ones are all going to be kind of in the range of like down here on the second page. Right?
Okay.
Like, they're not the super easy ones, like how do you add a string together or whatever, right? But like sum all the numbers in the array, like find the difference between two arrays. Like seek and destroy, I think is like you're trying to find a specific value and then deleting it, right? Like go through an array and delete all of the like the extra values that were put in. And they're good challenges. And once you've exhausted that, like I said, do code wars and join like the code platoon group. And like I see, like they're all in order basically, or like you can set it, right? So you can set your difficulty. Like I think at this point, like the 8s, you could do a couple of them just to dip your toes in, but like you're probably both operating at a level where like you could start doing the 7s, and they might be a little on the challenging side, but you do a couple of them and like you're going to get your feet underneath you pretty quick.
Okay.
And the only other thing that I'll throw out to you is that like if you do that, because the like their replit over here kind of sucks, is grab it and you can still write it in a replit, or you can write it in VS Code and then just copy and paste your answer into there.
Okay.
Right. And this is a pretty good challenge right here. It looks like they're making you do SpongeBob text, Uglify, right? But like this is you have already done all of the challenges that would lead up to this one.
Okay. And you said there's like a code platoon group within this?
Yeah, you can join a clan and basically like search for code platoon, and like that's in there, and then when you do that you can see what everyone else is working on. And there's like 50 or 60 people in here.
Nice.
And then also the same thing, because like if you're working in here and you copy and paste a link and drop that into intro to coding and say like, hey, I'm stuck on this or whatever, like other people will jump on it because they have accounts too. They'll log in, they'll look at it. I'll look at it, right? Like, I mean, now that I've moved into this one, like probably after class, I'm going to solve it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah. Sean, you got anything else?
No, I really appreciate everything.
Well, I appreciate you guys stepping up and being active in class, especially as you're like the last two in the room at this point. Usually I finish class with about 5 or 6 people in it. So this one definitely shook out a little bit harder. But you both did awesome. Like normally, like when I have 5 or 6 people in class, I still split people out into groups, but for you guys to work in the main room in front of me and work through the challenges, you both did really good. And I know it's painful, but now that you've done it like this, it gets even easier to do it on your own when no one's looking. So
Yeah, I've
But-
learned a lot from you. Yeah, not just even the techniques, but even just concepts of I don't know. Now I'm drawing a blank, but just you're changing the way I think about programming and how to write a program. So it's great. I appreciate it.
and I can't remember in the Humble Bundle. I know there was a no starch press one. I don't know if they had things like a programmer in here and I think it was a different one. You know, the art of programming. Yeah, so but the Think Like a Programmer from No Starch Press is a really good book. And then also the other books that I throw out to people that are just getting started are the Head First books. Because they're not like they're written with a little bit of a sense of humor. A lot of programming books are very dry, syntactical coding books. The Head First books usually have they're a little bit easier to read without falling asleep. So, and again, you should be able to get a copy of this for free from your library. Or like, I mean, if you want to pop to have your own copy, you can, but, or, I mean, like, you'll see these at thrift stores or like half price books or whatever. I would try and get like the most up-to-date version of it, which is, this one, it looks like. Yeah, so this one's from 2014, so that's new enough. I think the first version I pulled up was from 2008. So that one from 2014 should be great. Get it from your library, but however you want to procure it. This book helps out a ton. And then the Think Like a Programmer, there's not a lot of code in it, but it helps you start to like think about how to break apart the problem. So it just builds on what we've been working on. So I'm gonna turn off the recording.